Well, good morning, everybody. Very glad to be here this morning. Nice to be joined by friends, leading advocates for active transportation and road safety. My name is Joel Harden. I'm the member of Provincial Parliament for Ottawa Centre. Bonjour tout le monde. Je m'appelle Joel Harden. Je suis le député au niveau provincial pour d'Ottawa Centre. Nos commentaires ce matin, ça va être en anglais, mais s'il y a des questions en français, on peut répondre en français. So what I want to do this morning is welcome everybody who's watching this particular press conference on the Moving Ontario Safely Act. This is a private member's bill that I will be introducing with colleagues MPP Dolly Begum, MPP Jessica Bell, and MPP Carpoche later this afternoon. But I thought it was important that you get some context as to why this issue remains a critical issue for safety in our communities. Before I go any further, however, I want to begin in a good way by acknowledging that the press conference we're running this morning sits on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that the city in which we currently are, Toronto, is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. So I'm not going to belabor the beginning of this press conference, but as the MPP who is helping to try to steer this particular effort of this legislation, which is now, as I understand it, the fourth attempt to make sure that we have more safe roads, particularly for vulnerable road users, I want to acknowledge that thousands of incidents involving serious injuries or fatalities happen in our country every year, and there are choices we can make, particularly in this legislation, to do something about it. So with us to talk about what we can do about it is Jessica Speaker from Friends and Families for Safe Streets, Patrick Brown from the Vulnerable Road User Coalition and Bike Law, Meredith Wilkinson from the Amputee Coalition of Toronto. And did I get that right? Not Ontario, Toronto?
That's right.
All right, thank you. So it is an honor, truly, to be here. I forgot to mention I am the provincial critic for active transportation and transit, and I've been on a steep learning curve, learning from fantastic people we're with this morning. They can make the case much better than I as to why this legislation needs to pass and be embraced by all parties. Jessica, I want to pass it to you so you can talk about this bill and what it means for you.
Thank you. My name is Jessica Speaker, and I'm here to speak on behalf of Friends and Families for Safe Streets to express our full support for the Moving Ontario Safely Act. This bill remedies the many loopholes in the Highway Traffic Act which currently allow reckless, at-fault drivers who seriously injure or kill other people with their vehicles to escape without meaningful penalties that are in line with the unspeakable devastation they have inflicted. In 2015, I was T-boned on my bike by a woman making a left turn. She slammed her nearly 5,000-pound SUV like a battering ram into my unprotected body. She broke my spine, she inflicted a moderate traumatic brain injury, and she caused such extensive soft tissue damage that a few weeks later I nearly died a second time due to blood clot-related complications. It may surprise Ontarians to find out that the law does not protect them, that killing and severely injuring other people with a car is not actually illegal in and of itself. I was certainly shocked and sickened when I was told the morning after my crash, while I was lying in bed, swollen and bruised and broken, unable to even get up without help and in excruciating pain, having difficulty thinking clearly because of the brain damage, that the person who did this to me was not getting charged with anything serious. Her charge was turn not in safety, a minor Highway Traffic Act infraction. I had assumed she would get careless or dangerous driving because what she did was objectively careless and dangerous. Because hitting someone with a car is not illegal, when someone driving hits a person who is walking, riding a bike, or using a mobility device, police struggle to find an appropriate charge to lay, whether it's turn not in safety, fail to yield, unsafe start from stop, all of which are minor tickets, carry negligible fines, and few, if any, demerit points. Charges of careless or dangerous driving, which have higher penalties, are rarely laid because they require an extremely high burden of proof and have an abysmally low conviction rate anyway. The bottom line is that reckless drivers are almost never held accountable for their actions, and devastated victims and families are slapped in the face by the very system that's supposed to help them. In the end, the woman who nearly killed me chose to fight her charge as if the $85 fine was too much for destroying my health. Ultimately, she pled down to the most trivial Highway Traffic Act infraction, improper use of a turn signal, and she was fined $300. She got 0 demerit points, and most inexplicable of all, she got to continue driving as if she did nothing wrong, likely further endangering the public. The lack of justice was maddening for me, but it's infinitely worse for families when a loved one is violently and preventably killed. The lives of our loved ones, the decimated quality of life of survivors like me, all of the rich possibilities of our futures, all of our value to our friends, our families, and all of our contributions to society through our careers and our personal lives, all of our worth is reduced to a few $100s or nothing at all. It's intolerable, and it's time to fix this gap now. If this law were in place, drivers would face justice, the public would be better protected, and drivers would be deterred from reckless driving. Every at-fault driver's license would be suspended until they appear in traffic court to face their devastated victims, until they complete community service, and until they complete remedial driver retraining. Why should any at-fault reckless driver who just demonstrated themselves to be a menace on the road be getting behind the wheel again until they can demonstrate to society that they can drive safely? Surely that is not too much to ask. Road safety should never be a partisan issue. The current provincial government has no good reason not to support the Moving Ontario Safely Act if they care about victims of road violence at all. This coming Sunday is the World Day of Remembrance for Road Traffic Victims, a worldwide event recognized by the UN. This week is the perfect opportunity for all MPPs to support road safety and show that they have the political will to do everything possible to end the public health crisis that steals hundreds of lives across Ontario, with unknown thousands of victims suffering life-ruining injuries every year, year after year. To be clear, this law does not make life any less convenient for drivers. It's not a war on the car. Lives are at stake. This is not the appropriate bill to play political games with. It's not appropriate to dither and delay when people are dying and something effective can be done. We need this protection for people outside of cars, and we need it now.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you so much. Meredith, I want to hand it over to you to offer some comments about the bill next.
Thanks. My name is Meredith Wilkinson, and I used to be a devoted bicycle commuter. In September 2017, while on my daily bicycle commute to work, I was pulled under the front wheel of a garbage truck when its driver made a last-minute decision to make a right turn across my on-street bike lane. My lower body was pinned under the front wheel of the truck, and I was dragged several meters. I remained conscious the entire time. My mangled right leg remained trapped under the wheel of the truck, my bones crushed, and the tissue and muscle torn from my leg. That's what happens when you're pinned and dragged under a 25-ton truck. I was rushed to the hospital via emergency run, and the last thing I remember before being put under was the doctor informing me that I would likely lose my leg. As a result of the commercial truck driver's actions, I lost my right leg above the knee and required extensive skin grafts due to my injuries. It's taken so much effort to get to where I am today. My recovery will never end. For the rest of our lives, my family and I will face setbacks and frustrations due to my physical limitations. Losing a leg is a lifelong sentence. Early in my recovery, I was cautioned that vehicle drivers who injure or kill vulnerable road users often face appallingly little in terms of penalties and criminal charges. Even though the commercial truck driver who ran me over was charged with careless driving, I knew early on that the driver would likely be able to plead down to a lesser charge and potentially receive only a small monetary fine. Drivers who seriously injure or kill vulnerable road users often do not even have to attend their sentence hearings, which means victim impact statements fall on deaf ears. Therefore, convicted drivers may never hear how their actions have impacted the lives of victims and their families. I'm left to wonder, what can a driver possibly learn from this? What would a driver learn from paying only a small monetary fine? If they're not present when victim impact statements are read in court? If the status of their driver's license remains unaffected? Due to the nature of my injury, specifically the amputation of my right leg, my driver's license was medically suspended. This made sense to me. Something happened to me that required a re-examination of my ability to drive a vehicle safely and competently. The medical system flagged this and has given medical professionals the ability to suspend a driver's license until driver retraining is completed. It cost me money and my time to schedule and complete several hours of required driver retraining to reinstate my license. It was inconvenient, but I didn't resent it. It made sense that this process was necessary. But how was I the only one having to go through this process? The professional commercial truck driver who ran me over, despite being charged with careless driving, did not have their license suspended, nor were they required to undergo driver retraining. How is this remotely fair? In cases where vulnerable road users are seriously injured or killed, why are there no red flags within the legal system to trigger the requirement for driver retraining? Mandatory driver retraining and education for convicted drivers is such an obvious, reasonable, and necessary step to help protect vulnerable road users. Since my collision, people I know have acknowledged that they now drive differently, with more awareness, particularly around cyclists and pedestrians. People are more likely to obey traffic laws and drive with consideration when they understand that the consequences of inattentive, careless driving are extremely serious and life-altering. Vulnerable road users understand the consequences of collisions. We literally feel them with our broken bones, our brain injuries, our lost limbs, and our permanent disabilities. We live with the consequences for the rest of our lives. The vulnerable road user laws represent an opportunity for convicted drivers to understand the consequences of injuring or killing a vulnerable road user. VRU law represents an opportunity for justice and closure for the victims and an opportunity to provide drivers an extra incentive to drive safely when sharing the road with vulnerable road users.
Thank you so much, Meredith. Patrick, over to you.
Thank you, Joel. I'm here on behalf of the Vulnerable Road User Coalition of Ontario. They support the passing of this nonpartisan bill. It includes the major active transportation organizations in Ontario. It includes the Ontario Brain Injury Association. It includes the United Senior Citizens of Ontario, which is the largest seniors organization. It includes Walk Toronto. It includes Cycle Toronto. It includes Jess's organization, Friends and Families for Safe Streets. It has legal organizations. It has the largest, also, just so you know, in addition to all those and others that support this bill, the largest city in Ontario, the City of Toronto, passed a motion unanimously asking that this bill be passed. Right now, our system, as you've heard it, has a glaring hole in it. Victims like Jess and Meredith and their families, they feel no sense of justice. There's almost no accountability for those who drive distracted, who choose to drive badly, and have a complete disregard to others. It really is time to give meaningful penalties that make people reflect their own unsafe actions. It's time to send a message that if you're going to drive badly and unsafely and you're going to hurt and kill people, you're not paying another small fine. It's time to move Ontario safely. We're tired of seeing someone make an illegal turn and kill a 4-year-old child going to school at a crosswalk and the person getting a $1,000 fine. We're tired of seeing a driver get an $85 fine after being convicted of an illegal left turn in a truck, killing a dad who was simply riding his bike to get home from work and take his kids out for Halloween. We are tired of hearing a driver get a $500 fine when she drives into the opposite lane of traffic, hits a dad and grandfather, and who chose simply to get out on his bike. A $500 fine. Tired of the driver that ran the red light and killed Eduardo LeBlanc and got a $700 fine. We're tired of video capturing a young girl on her bike being hit by a speeding vehicle and no penalty at all, only to hear that accidents happen. They don't. Things just don't happen. There is no accountability in the system. We all pay for this conduct. Our healthcare system pays for it. The ones who choose to speed, the ones who driving distractedly, they don't. Things have to change. The unfortunate reality is that the number of pedestrians and cyclists being killed is not going down. That's from Public Health Ontario. That is unlike people inside cars. Public Health Ontario reported that over 7,000 vulnerable road users will be brought into the emergency wards every year. That means 21 people today in an emergency department being struck by cars. Until we have the technology and the infrastructure to stop this, let's have laws that deter and actually make bad drivers become good drivers. Driving is not a right. Is it too much asked for someone to take a driving course after they've been convicted of an offense and have killed or seriously hurt someone? Victims and their families deserve more. For 7 years, we've been asking for this. We thank those MPPs like MPP Harden, MPP Bell, MPP Begum, MPP Carpecci for moving this forward, and every other MPP that supports this and pushes this forward. We would like to see this law passed. I thank Meredith and Jess for coming here and sharing their stories and telling and asking that this change happen. And on behalf of the whole coalition, and thank them for their continued support for this bill, we'd like to see this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you. I see my friend Dolly Begum is here, and Dolly, I was wondering if you'd like to offer a couple of comments from your perspective about why this legislation is important for you. Sorry to put you on the spot. Pardon me? Are you sure? All right. All right. Suffice to say, MPP Begum's a major supporter of this bill. Thank you so much for being here, my friend. So let's say a couple of things to wrap this, because this is the start of the journey for the fourth time. This is not the end. This is the start of the journey for the fourth time. As all the panelists mentioned, this is not a partisan issue. This is about road safety. I believe in my heart this is something we can convince all legislators in this building to support. But, as with anything, we have to prioritize it. So what I can commit to people watching this press conference today is that with the support of our party, with the Ontario NDP, with the support of other caucuses, the Liberal, the Green, the Conservatives, we are going to be taking this bill on the road. As the official opposition critic for active transportation, I'm going to make sure we hold community consultations in every region of this province, North, Southwest, the Greater GTA, and Eastern Ontario. So citizens, everyday residents, can make sure their voices are heard, as you've heard leading voices this morning, as to why the Moving Ontario Safely Act is important and needs to be passed. I am also happy to tell you that we have a recorded second reading date, thanks to MPP Begum, who's given us a little bit more time to campaign. It is September 19th, 2023. So between now, this morning, and then, we are going to be on a journey to convince all legislators, all Ontarians, to make road safety a priority, particularly for vulnerable road users. And if I'm getting this correctly, a restorative justice approach. So people who've been involved in these incidents can understand the gravity of these incidents and strive to be better. So let's just commit to that. Let's commit to making this a priority. This afternoon, I will be introducing the Moving Ontario Safely Act with MPP Begum, MPP Bell, MPP Carpecci for first reading, and I hope that it will be passed and sent to committee. Passed, and then at second reading, which is next September, we're going to have an opportunity to debate this legislation. But long before that, we're going to have an opportunity for you, if you're watching this at home, to weigh in about why you think this bill should be passed, or if you think changes need to be made to it, what changes can be made. I also want to invite cycling enthusiasts that want to help us promote this bill, that there's a group of us in Ottawa who will be organizing an Ottawa to Toronto bike trip, stopping along the way in communities on the occasion of the second reading of this bill. So if that interests you, get in touch with our office, the MPP office in Ottawa Centre. We look forward to working with you. Your opinion matters. And once again, to Jessica, Patrick, Meredith, and you can't see them, but we have so many people here today who have been championing this cause. Thank you so much for being here. Your support means a lot to us. Let's pass the Moving Ontario Safely Act.